Buckeyes live on a Friday, folks. That's what you got to stay on your toes. Subscribe, hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live, typically on Wednesday, but we've got to adjust schedules and we do so and make sure that we're here every week for you. So we've got these two guys to thank for that. Steve Hellwagon right next to me, Bucknuts 247 Sports, Tony Gerdeman, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Buckeye Weekly is the podcast that you need to lock in on, Buckeye fans. Leave those comments and questions. We appreciate the super chat contributions to keep us going here at the Voice of College Football. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing great.
Well. Steve, I got to say, things must be getting a bit rough in the recruiting rankings when the Buckeyes have to delve all the way down to the 12th rated wide receiver in the country, just a top 90 player.
Yeah, Quincy Porter, Oradell, New Jersey, Bergen Catholic High School, 6'3", 190. He passes the look test, obviously the number 90 prospect overall in the country. He committed to the Buckeyes a week ago today, the number 12 wide receiver in the country. And again, this is an outstanding prospect. He had offers from just about everybody nationally. As I looked through his profile, Alabama was on there. Certainly, he had made a visit to Ohio State earlier in June, and obviously came away very impressed with the Buckeyes and Brian Hartline. As I scroll down, some of the others: Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Illinois, Kentucky, Michigan, Notre Dame, Penn State, Oregon. So just about all of the usual characters had offers in here for Quincy Porter, one of the top wide receivers in the country. And you know, we were at the camp a week or so ago, and I was talking to one of my buds who also covers recruiting, and he's like, you know, we've got wide receivers. You know, we are heck on recruiting wide receivers, and he's the lead one in this class so far. But you know, what you'd want to see is obviously at some point they're going to even this out a little bit and go and get some of those big name offensive linemen like a David Sanders and some of these other guys that are out there. The Ohio State class currently ranked number 1 overall, and certainly a lot more players still to get for Ohio State and obviously other schools before that's finalized. You know, in February, I suppose, when it would be finals after the last guy's signed. But right now it looks pretty good, and Quincy Porter fills the need as a big wide receiver at Ohio State, and a guy that can play that split end position, get off the ball on his own, and go make plays for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, he is a playmaker. He's not, I think this is one of the things he said, he's not just a big guy because he is 6'3", 6'4", but he can make plays after the catch. He's not just a chain mover. He's a playmaker, and I know he's a guy that a lot of schools were after, including Michigan, as I see some comments in the comment section there about Michigan feeling pretty good about him at one time, and then I believe he committed days before or the day of his supposed Michigan official visit, and so another receiver for the Buckeyes. And you know, there were some concerns about what this receiver class was going to look like, at least in my mind, because I don't expect Decory and Moore to be part of it. And Porter is a pretty good, not a consolation prize because they're still trying to bring in as many as they can, but a really good get for them. Second New Jersey receiver in the class for them, joining Dazee Jones. And I know I suspect at some point they'll branch out and choose a different state to get a receiver from. But right now, the two they got, they like, and you know, maybe add 2 to 3 more.
Appreciate you being here at Buckeyes Live. We will take comments and questions there. Again, consider the super chat. These guys show up each and every week for us, and we appreciate everyone being flexible, but understand we got to be flexible with their schedules, so we're here on a Friday. Okay, before we get to a big recruiting weekend, as Steve and I were discussing before we started to record, Tavien St. Clair showed up and showed up well from what we understand at the Elite 11. Now, Steve's intel was that he impressed. My intel from our USC guy who was out covering the Elite 11 was that he was the best quarterback there. Somebody else won the MVP. I'll have to look that up to see who that was. But apparently, again, St. Clair showed his value.
Yeah, I can say, looking at our 24/7 recap of the quarterbacks who were there, he was their alpha dog, which is number one for 24/7. He is the number 2 player in the country. He's behind Bryce Underwood. And Tony, you may know this. Why wasn't Bryce Underwood at this camp? He's the number 1 player in the country. Did he go, and did he even get involved in this? I know you have to go to a regional camp maybe to get your invite, but
I think he just chose not to, and
just not to screw with it.
Yeah,
Hard
Arch
to
Manning
improve
did it
on number
recently.
1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was my, because I googled it the other day, like, why wasn't he there, and it's just chose not to, apparently.
Yeah. He was not named the Elite 11 MVP. Let's see. That went to the next guy, Keelan Russell, an Alabama commit, who is the number 39 overall prospect in the country. So I guess the organizers would have to explain their rationale and why they picked him. But our guys, this is what they wrote, that St. Clair was solid all 3 days. He made things constantly look easy. And that's kind of been our impression, that St. Clair just kind of glides through things and is very fluid athletically in his body for such a big guy. He looks like Terrell Pryor standing there a little bit with how tall he is. And he's really coming into his own, I guess, as a thrower right now. He not only has ready-to-play size, but he also possesses clean mechanics, which kind of comes back to that idea that he's able to glide in and out of things. He's able to touch on all different corners of the field. They loved how St. Clair was able to glide both inside and outside of the pocket. Came away impressed with his ability to layer the football over the middle. They said, in our eyes, St. Clair is the type of quarterback that you could drop into next year's NFL scouting combine, and he would have scouts buzzing given the combination of his frame, mobility, arm, and his mindset. So that's all good stuff. Obviously, we have already had some discussions behind the scene about potentially moving him over Bryce Underwood to number 1 in their rankings. So that, to me, is very, very high praise for a kid from Bellefontaine, Ohio, a rural school, so to speak, not playing against Cleveland St. Ignatius, Lakewood St. Edward, and Cincinnati Moeller, and the great football programs in Ohio, to go out to California and show that he's one of the top quarterbacks in the country. I'm just reading up here a little bit on Keelan Russell, who was named the MVP. He was a commitment to Southern Methodist, SMU, and he changed to Alabama. He's at Duncanville, Texas, which is one of the top high school programs, obviously, there in the state of Texas. And, you look at it, the MVP last year was Julian Sayin. So Alabama has 2 MVPs in a row, although one of them is going to tee it up at Ohio State as a freshman. So take that for whatever it's worth. And I'm just trying to read if there was a rationale why this happened, but I can't really find that there's anything to back up, or a quote from anybody to back up why Keelan Russell was chosen number 1 over, or chosen as the MVP of the camp over Tavien St. Clair. Just know that St. Clair did everything he could to impress everybody in his 3 days there, and will be coming back, make his triumphant return to Ohio, and get ready for his senior year there at Bellefontaine.
I think the third day was a bunch of 7-on-7, and so there's some thought that maybe Tavien St. Clair was Ohio just now getting 7-on-7. Maybe it was at a disadvantage with that, and it's not like Russell was behind him far behind him in the first 2 days. But yeah, I mean, every time you watch Tavien St. Clair, you're going to be impressed. He won the accuracy challenge with a score of 67, which means nothing to anybody other than the fact that Julian Sand won it last year with a 53, to give you an idea of how good he did in that one. But you don't have to watch him long to be impressed. And he looks like a prototype. And I said the same thing about Bryce Underwood, seeing him last May here in Ohio. He was at a camp, and he looked like a robot throwing the football, and they're both very similar in that way. It's like, if when people are creating players, when the college football game comes out next month, they're going to be creating guys that look like Tavien St. Clair and Bryce Underwood, and you're going to have to just crank those ratings up as well, because both of those guys are pretty good. And St. Clair now going to be on his official visit to Ohio State this weekend to do some recruiting.
I'll throw out this topic. Steve mentioned it. I had meant to bring it up as well. I brought it up elsewhere this week. The clip is flying all over the place. Urban Meyer in particular, Jim Tressel added on as well, before we can then move on and clear the deck for recruiting for the rest of the show. So they let it be known, hey, we were walking through this, we have not seen this collection of talent assembled at Ohio State before, is pretty much the bottom line assessment of two Hall of Fame coaches that are arguably the most successful. Well, they are the most successful since Woody Hayes at the Ohio State University. So, Steve, does this matter? Do these comments matter? There's a backlash of, they've put more pressure on this team and this coaching staff and Ryan Day. Maybe. Does it matter? Doesn't pressure come with the job anyway? Isn't there a championship expectation every year anyway?
Pressure creates diamonds, or whatever, I don't know, whatever little thing Urban might have said. We embrace the pressure. It's part of our culture. The grind, the root canal. No, I don't know. I think that I think it's a good thing that the former coaches like Urban and Jim Tressel have said this, because it kind of puts it in perspective. And they both had some outstanding teams. I mean, a lot of the starters and even many of the backups on the 2002 national championship team played in the NFL. And the same thing is the case with the team that Urban Meyer coached in 2014. Most of the starters and a lot of the backups played in the NFL, and some of them still play to this day. So to me, and there were any number of other very talented teams at Ohio State for both of those coaches that came up a little bit short at times. They're talking about 12, 13, 14 of these guys being drafted next spring, which will say a lot. Maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 in the first round, depending on how they all play. So, the onus is there on this team to go out and play up to the level that everybody believes that's possible for this team to play at. And I think that that's going to be just a tremendous, I'd say it's a burden, but, it's also a privilege to go out and back up the talk and back up, the lofty ranking. You're number 2, Georgia is number 1 in everybody's analysis right now going into the season. And anything short of playing in the national championship game for either of those teams will be a bitter and complete and total disappointment. So, it's June 21st, and everybody knows that right now. The ball will not be put on the tee until August 30th or 31st, whatever it is. And that's when it starts for real. But 2 months out, everybody knows what the score is. And, it's time to get down to business and realize that, so much is out there for this team, and they just have to go and grab the brass ring. That's what's been missing from these Ohio State teams here in recent years, is the ability, when that in the fourth quarter of those key critical games, to go out and put that play, to put the ball over the goal line, or to keep that other team out of the end zone in that critical moment. And it's time to take that next step. And, again, got to beat Michigan, got to win the Big Ten championship, and got to get to that national championship game. That's the destiny for this team. That's their assignment. We'll see if they're capable of accepting it.
I remember the last super ultra mega talented Ohio State football team that was definitely going to win it. And that was 2015, and they were derailed by quarterback play. And I don't think you can look at this team and ignore the situation at quarterback. And so, yeah, there's a ton of talent. It doesn't matter if the quarterback play isn't there. Like you need to be able to get good quarterback play. It doesn't have to be great, just be good and make timely plays. And I will also remind people, Ohio State's not even the favorite to win it all this year. It's Georgia. Georgia's the favorite. They're the pick right now. And so I saw Dan Wetzel write a column about this is a make or break year for Ryan Day. I don't know what break means in that, when it's like, win it all or bust. What does bust mean in that? Ryan Day's winning percentage right now is .875, which is, if would be second all time, but he doesn't have 10 years of being a head coach to count towards the Newt Rockneys and the Urban Meyers and the Nick Sabans. So the make or break and the natty or bust or whatever, this is going to be the most difficult national championship in college football history to win. So to expect it is crazy. If you definitely won it, but Ohio State, if they're going to win it all, is going to have to beat Oregon twice, probably at the very least twice. You're going to have to beat, 2 or 3 other playoff teams. And so it's not out of the realm of possibility. Somebody has to win it. Somebody is going to win it. But to think that it's make or break or natty or bust or whatever, Urban Meyer can say whatever he wants. Jim Tressel can say whatever he wants. Jim Tressel never had to play in a Big Ten championship game. He was the beneficiary of Big Ten titles when he lost to a team he was sharing the title with. Urban Meyer had some really great teams, but quarterback play derailed them. Quarterback play limited them. And the playoffs that they've got going on this year is going to be unlike anything else. And so it's going to be really damn difficult for anybody to win it all this year. And in terms of the pressure, Ryan Day said it this week when we talked to him. It's always pressure. There's no more pressure than before. But what he likes about the pressure this year, he's got a really good team behind him, and that's that's where you can it becomes easier to handle that pressure when the team you've got is really, really good, because the pressure is the same every year. And I know people are trying to put more on it because of how good they are or whatever. But Ohio State fans, I'll ask you guys, when was the last time Ohio State fans didn't expect to win or didn't have national championship hopes? And it was probably 2011. And that was only because of what happened with Taggate. Because I guarantee you in 2010, everybody's saying, yeah, but wait till next year too. And Terrell Pryor is a senior and you got all of these seniors. 2011 is going to be a big year. So national championship expectations are an annual thing. National championship realities are much different.
Yeah, I don't expect that Steve Day speaks for the entire Michigan fan base, but he speaks for a number of people. And I've heard this out of other Michigan fans where we won a national championship, not that we don't want to win another one and don't want to continue to play elite football. But, if we finish 7-5 for a few more years, we won our natty. I feel good. I'll be fine with that. I've never heard that type of response from an Ohio State fan or the fan base in general. I think they want more and more. What did they want in 2015? They wanted back-to-back national championships. Absolutely.
Well, and I'll also say the last few times Ohio State was supposed, like maybe the last 4 times Ohio State was supposed to win a national championship. You go to 1969, 2003, 1998, 2003, 2015. They did not get it done. And so, it usually happens like the year before it's supposed to. And that was the case in 68, 2002, 2002 team was really, really good. Obviously in 2003, the expectations were just as high, but the offense didn't get it done. You didn't have Maurice Clarett. So there's always something that can happen, and the expectations are great, but reality is a much different thing.
I look at the comparison with Georgia this way. This is a pretty general comparison. I think that Georgia's got a better roster, top to bottom. But I don't know how much player number 80 matters, because you got to stay healthy to win a national championship. I think Ohio State has the best premium talent in the country, like players 1 through 15, 1 through 20. I'm not saying it's not debatable, not arguable, not close, but that I that's my evaluation. Now, the quarterback position, that is going to be my decision about Ohio State winning a Big Ten championship and also a national championship. Is my thought about, is Will Howard good enough to get the job done to that degree? He's not going to fall apart. He's a good player. He's a known commodity. That's more than a lot of teams have, and more than this Ohio State team has had in the past with Justin Fields, let's say in 2019. He's a proven commodity. I think he has to be a better version of himself. And whether he is working toward being that player himself or simply the complement of talent around him is going to elevate him as just being who he is, I think those are certainly components.
And I'll say, like, I was talking with an NFL scout recently and in the past as well, and he says Ohio State's roster, the only positions Georgia has a better situation is quarterback and offensive line. He said he'd take Ohio State over Georgia at every other position, but those are two really big positions, and especially when you've got a quarterback as good as Georgia does. And so will I be surprised if it comes down to those two teams? Not at all. I guess it just depends on where they are in the bracket when everything finally gets lined up.
Yeah, the whole bust concept, when you talk about this national championship or bust, I don't understand that either, unless that just means they clean house and they fire people. And again, they would have to have a lousy season by their standards for Ryan Day to get fired.
Yeah, he's got a ironclad contract for many years into the future for multi-millions of dollars. They're not going to fire him. On the flip side, he could burn out and say, I can't do this anymore, and agree to walk away potentially if it doesn't go very well. But I don't see that happening. So he's the coach for the foreseeable future at Ohio State, as long as he wants to be, as far as I'm concerned, because I mean, you can't go, 6-6 a couple of years and expect to maintain it. But I don't think that's even possible given the roster. I mean, I've been here at Ohio State, following this when the cupboard was completely bare, going way back, and it's night and day compared to that. The culture is night and day compared to that as well. These guys are so bought into what everything is trying to be accomplished that they have no choice but to succeed and no choice but to win. So I think it's all going to work out. It's all going to come out in the wash. That isn't to say that they can't go out to Oregon and lose a game, but the important thing is how you respond to that. You come back, and when you get a second chance to play them, potentially in the Big Ten championship, do you win that game? That's going to be the bigger of the two if they do happen to play each other twice. And I would put that for anybody if they happen to play Michigan, if they were to have to play them twice, or Penn State. That'll be the one that you have to win, because that's the one that carries the Big Ten championship as well as the first round bye and a top 4 seed for the playoff. Those are 3 things that you absolutely want and have to have if you expect to go on and play for a national championship. So to me, I look at it that, it's going to be a long season, and something unforeseen is going to happen somewhere along the way. I can't predict what it'll be. It could be something crazy. It could be something small that develops into something crazy. You just never know. So I think that just enjoy the ride is what I say. And I say this every time. It's like, you've just got to embrace that this is going to be a 3 or 4 month grind trying to get from point A to point B. And it may not always look the best, but they're going to continue. I have no doubt they're going to play their best football in November, and we're going to find out if it's good enough or not.
And we're going to continue to find out about Will Howard and what he can do, because he's never had weapons like he'll have at Ohio State. And it's hard to judge somebody based on limited things that they can do. Trying to judge a one-man band when all they have is a bucket and a recorder. Like, give him some actual cymbals and a bass drum and a trumpet, and now he can really play. but we saw some things from him. And as I've said many times, I don't know about him as a deep passer because the best weapon they had last year was their tight end. So we'll find out a bunch more about him. And if he can hold off Devin Brown or Tavien St and all of that, I mean, that's to say you're absolutely sure how this is going to go at quarterback. I think you're lying. I think it's also okay to believe that Will Howard. I think believing that Will Howard is going to have a very good season is not out of line. It should happen. You're the quarterback at Ohio State. For one, Ryan Day has seen something in you that is like, we think you can play. For two, all of the people you've got around you, the players you've got around you, and you're set up to succeed. So Kyle McCord was a second or third team All Big Ten guy last year, and that wasn't good enough. Those are the standards. And so I said it before, if they can get the passing game that they got out of McCord last year, this year with Howard, and then add in the running, I think that's good enough.
Not that it matters now, but did this program make a run at Cam Ward? Because I think they would probably have a much different approach to this. I guess I'm jumping ahead. They could possibly have had a different approach to this season and running an offense with a Cam Ward and being more of what it was under CJ Stroud than more let's pound the rock and play to Will Howard's strengths.
Yeah, they looked at him, and I don't know how much after the price tag they went. Because I was told early on that Ohio State were definitely talking, but I think after the fact, I go back and look, and I think that was coming from the Ward people trying to push the price up, and then Miami eventually jumped on it or whatever. But I know they certainly looked at everybody, and then you go from there. It's like who fits best, and then the five guys that fit best. What's the price tag on those guys? Is one too much? Is the price tag on Ward compared to the price tag on Will Howard much more than the gap between the two players on the field? And if it is, then you go with the cheaper guy. And not that you don't have the money for it, but like at some point you go with the guys that want to be there and are willing to be there. And Will Howard certainly wanted to be at Ohio State.
Buckeyes Live, folks, typically on Wednesday. We're here on Friday, so please subscribe if you are not subscribed. That way you can keep track of when we go live. Hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live. We got Steve Helway again here, of course, 247 Sports, Bucknuts, and, of course, Tony Girdman from BuckeyeHuddle.com, and also Buckeye Weekly. What's going on there these days, Tony?
Buckeye Weekly will drop an episode today talking about the official visits this weekend of some key targets that are not yet committed, like David Sanders and some others. Jordan Davison, Dorian Brew, the other main guys who are not yet committed but are finishing up their official visits. So we'll talk about that and Buckeye Weekly, Buckeye Huddle. You can find out stuff that I'm writing right now. Continuing to do my daily preview of the college football season and the Ohio State Buckeyes through a bunch of different topics, so you can find that there as well.
Steve, what's the good word with you this week?
Well, I was able to get away Monday and Tuesday. I missed the camp on Monday, which Tony can probably fill us in a little bit more about what happened Monday and Tuesday with the camp and the 7-on-7. I went out to Pittsburgh to follow my beloved Reds, and this is the third year that a couple friends of mine and myself and some other folks have gone on the road. We went to Chicago 2 years ago for Cubs, Milwaukee last year for Brewers. Would definitely recommend both those, and also wholeheartedly recommend Pittsburgh. It's a lot of fun and a great ballpark there at PNC Park. So we had that for 2 days. They lost on Monday to Paul Skeens, the great rookie pitcher for Pittsburgh, just mowed the Reds down. But Nick Lodolo did the same for the Reds on Tuesday. He's outstanding. And I'm actually, my twins, who are 25, tomorrow, my son and my daughter, Carter and Dolan, both of them graduates from the Ohio State University, to celebrate, we're going to go to Cincinnati tomorrow, 4:00 start against the Boston Red Sox. They're both big Reds fans, so we thought that would be a fun day out tomorrow, even though it's going to be pushing the high 90s in the Queen City tomorrow. This heat is no joke. Stay inside, stay hydrated, and keep it locked in right here because, there's all kinds of great content on this channel. And with Tony's site and our site at Bucknuts as well, all kinds of great coverage. I know Bill Kurlick from our site will be all over these visits this coming weekend. And if we want to get into the camp, the 7-on-7, or the visits this weekend, we can do that here in the second half of the show.
Nice. We've got quite the lineup tonight. We've got a Clemson live show that's at 5:30 Eastern over on the Clemson channel with our guys, Tiger Paw Craven and Jordan Bowman. You've got me and the crew with Florida State Live, typically on Wednesday. Had to be moved to Friday as well. That's at 6. Then I turn it around for our Big Ten live show at 7. Tony Altamore on his deep dive, USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, and how they compare to the Big Ten. And if you don't know what a deep dive is with Tony, check us out at 7 Eastern.
A lot of charts and graphs, aren't there?
A lot of charts and graphs. A lot of good stuff. Admission rates, stuff you don't know.
Mark,
Good
what I'm
stuff.
seeing, I see that lineup and I see future Big Ten team, Big Ten live show, USC call-in show at 10 p.m.
Yeah, the league's done fairly well for itself in taking over college football, or at least half of it. All right.
There was an interesting article, conversation with Notre Dame's athletic director talking about the difficulty of scheduling when the Big Ten and the SEC have so many teams now and they don't necessarily want to play Notre Dame anymore because of the difficulty of the schedules. And so eventually maybe Notre Dame has to come into some sort of an agreement or perhaps join a conference in order to schedule and make their television partners happy, because if you eliminate the SEC and the Big Ten from your scheduling and perhaps Clemson and Florida State leave for the Big Ten and takes the shine of the ACC with them, there's not really a lot there for the Notre Dame business partners, i.e. NBC, to keep them thrilled with that deal when they would much rather have better competition and better inventory for Notre Dame.
Yeah, Louisville ain't getting it done. As an example, I'm flipping to the independent page in the
Cal.
Yeah, good old Cal.
SMU.
Notre Dame certainly doesn't have much history with the Dust Bowl from the Big 12. I can't think of many matchups with any of those teams.
Yeah, there are a lot of
would
people.
Anyone want to watch them?
A lot of people upset with their home schedule this year. Northern Illinois, Miami, Ohio. They're playing 2 MAC schools. Of course, Ohio State is too. Louisville at home, Stanford at home, Florida State at home, and then Virginia at home, and that's it. I mean, for the people in South Bend and the students, it's kind of not much there. Then they have neutral site games with Army at Yankee Stadium, Navy at MetLife Stadium up in East Rutherford, I believe. Georgia Tech at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So Georgia Tech's moving the game from campus over to the Falcon Stadium to get more people in there. So 3 neutral site games, and they go on the road at Texas A&M and at USC. Those are going to be tough games, obviously, for them. But they're being squeezed out of the Power 2, and maybe they're going to have to grin and bear it and join one of the Power 2. I don't know.
I'm all for it. And they're being squeezed out for other reasons. I was in favor of those conferences squeezing them out on principle and basically saying, you need to be the one to join a conference. You're the last one standing. We're not going to schedule you. Of course, it involves other things. All right. Looking forward to Ohio State football in 2025 and beyond, Tony, can you give us a bit of a snapshot of where we stand in regards to camps and official visits? This weekend is a huge one. And who are those guys that we're keeping an eye on?
Yeah. camps are officially done. Thankfully, it's 3 weeks of heat and trying to remember which day is which when you see all of these guys. But they did offer some 2025 Ohio guys that they feel pretty good about. Two of those guys will be taking official visits this weekend, and 3 stars, Jake Cook, a Westerville offensive lineman, and Brody Lennon, a tight end from Gates Mills, Ohio. And you figure when they offer the 2025 kids that are going into their senior year in June at camp, and then those kids take an official visit pretty shortly after, they feel pretty good about landing those guys. And so we'll see what happens there. But the big news, like the big names, David Sanders, the number 1 offensive tackle in the nation, is on his way. Everybody, Ohio State feels about as good as they could for one of the top players in the nation, but you still got, this is your opportunity to close the deal and then hope that something else doesn't open it down the road. Dorian Brew, as I mentioned earlier, cornerback previously from Clayton Northmont here in Ohio, moved to Texas, north of Houston. He's back. We saw him last June. Very talented guy, one of the top corners in the nation. Jordan Davison is another uncommitted guy looking to be possibly the 3rd running back in this class for Ohio State. And one of the things I said on today's Buckeye Weekly is that this is not your typical 3 running back class, because Ohio State next year is they're going to be looking for runners. They're going to be looking for ball carriers. Quinshon Judkins is probably off to the NFL. Tavien Henderson is almost certainly off to the NFL, barring something tragic and unforeseen, basically. And so there's going to be a ton of carries available for running backs that will be in the 2025 class. So Jordan Davison can look to his left and look to his right and see Isaiah West and Bo Jackson, but look ahead of him and see no established person in front of him. So it doesn't matter necessarily how many guys you bring in. It's the guys ahead that would really be the factor. And I don't know that there's much ahead of him at this point. And then you can also be the number 2 guy in Ohio State's running back room and still, push for 1,000 yards. Master Teague rushed for like 800 yards back in 2019 or so. So there are a bunch of carries available for several people next year. And so that's what they'll sell Jordan Davison on. I think the fact that assuming he does make his trip, that tells you that he's not immediately automatically against having 3 running backs in the class.
Yeah, very exciting stuff this weekend. When you look at this official visit list, you have the number 2 player in the country, Tavien St. Clair, the number 3 player, David Sanders, who's not committed, the number 4 player, Devin Sanchez, who may be the hardest working man in show business in terms of he and his family trying to recruit other players to join them, and the number 6 player in the country, Naeem Offord, cornerback from Alabama. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of the top 6 players in the country all making official visits to Ohio State. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like that before. So David Sanders, they're going to put the full court press on him and say, look, man, we're going to win the national championship here with this group. I think the Tavien St. Clair showing coming off the lead 11, he's going to have like a hero's welcome, there at Ohio State this weekend, that he went out and showed everybody he's the best quarterback in the country. And I think that is somebody that you point to and you build around. And I think during the visit, that's going to be championed quite a bit. And David Sanders is going to see that and realize that, hey, this really is, this program really is on the verge of doing something really big. So, whether it's this year, next year, whatever, I think this year and the future. So to me, this weekend, we'll come back to the saying for today's show is make or break. This weekend is make or break. You got to get David Sanders. If you don't get David Sanders, as I said, we're going to surrender our position in Cuba. So it's time to make it happen for Justin Fry, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, Hartline. Use every bit of that recruiting prowess on an offensive lineman, talk him into the boat, and get it going, because it's time for the rubber to hit the road this weekend. I know that I suggested to Bill Kurlick after the 5 camp days are now over that he should do a roundup of all the guys they offered, just to kind of give you a thumbnail, look at, probably about 30, 35 guys, most of them from the 2026 class that they offered. I think it was as many as 17 players from the last date on Monday that they saw and they liked enough to offer. Tony, I don't know, did you go to the 7-on-7 Tuesday?
Only briefly, just to talk today, so I didn't watch much of it.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody really stood out from that. Tavien St. Clair wasn't there because he was at the Elite 11. I don't know if anybody really came to the forefront from that event, or if anybody was going to get an offer as a result of that. But yeah, so very eventful times, no doubt.
One of the guys they did offer, and maybe they offered that day, but it was Bodpegn Miller, quarterback, one receiver. He's going to be a receiver at the next level from Mansfield, Ohio, who was a 2025 guy who worked out a few days earlier with Heartline and has never really played receiver, but he's 6'4", 190, 200 pounds, like really good looking athlete, plays quarterback. And so they worked him out at receiver, really liked what he did, and they offered him. And if you go to tell you like how under the radar this is, he's a 2025 guy. He's the number 106 ranked athlete in 24/7's rankings, a 3-star, the number 50 player in Ohio. There's no composite ranking for him, probably because there's no ESPN profile for him. But he's a guy with, 3 or 4 or 5 Ivy League offers. One of his offers listed on his 24/7 page is Ashland, to give you an idea. But a guy going into a senior season who was a really good weapon for his team last year, but as a quarterback, and that's probably what he's going to do this year. But they saw what they liked, and Brian Hartline, Devin Jordan worked him out, saw some stuff there, and I wonder also how much this speaks to the receivers that they're missing out on. Whether it's Vernell Brown or DeCorian Moore, we'll see what happens with Jamie French, but a lot of their top targets are going to end up going elsewhere. And so you move down the list to your next group, but this is a guy that jumped up the list. And so I'm always interested in seeing how those June offers go, because this is firsthand working them out, tons of pressure, putting it on them, seeing how they respond. And Brian Hartline, 20 years ago, about next week, earned an offer at an Ohio State camp. And now he's here 20 years later, giving that opportunity to somebody else. And so he takes that stuff seriously.
Yep, that's Mansfield Senior there.
It is Ontario High School. So
Ontario, so Mansfield area,
smallish, I guess. Yeah,
just outside Mansfield. That's amazing stuff. I guess that had got by me with my travels, but the whole idea of the camp phenomenon really started in the mid-90s, and Bill Conley was kind of one of the forerunners of that. They had the camps and everything like that. They took a commitment from a defensive back, David Mitchell from Westerville, in like 95 or 96 at their summer camp. And that was like one of the earliest verbal commitments that had ever been on record. And he was going into his high school senior year. Most people didn't commit until after the football season, when they were taking official visits in the months of November and December. And then obviously there was no December signing period. Everybody signed in February, but guys started to make commitments in October, November, December, who were getting ready to graduate the following spring. And they didn't enroll at Ohio State or into colleges until, June. It started around 2000, 2005. They started enrolling guys for the January semester, or just 1 or 2 guys a class would be able to do that. Now, 14 of the 22 guys were able to enroll this past year in January. So it's been a dramatic change over these 30 years, and everything's accelerated. The Collegiate Commissioners Association looked at the idea of having a signing period in August before high school games start, but they turned that down. And so now it appears the signing period will be, I believe I think the Wednesday after the conference championship games this year. It's been moved up maybe a week or two, or there's something that differentiates it from the transfer portal period or something. But yeah, it's still in December, the early period for high school kids, and I would rather see it before the season. Although those letters are about, as binding as anything, because if there's a coaching change or even your assistant coach leaves for a job, the colleges generally acquiesce and let you out of your letter. So, or they don't like that you broke your leg in October, they might say, if you want out, you can get out, come see us, whenever or whatever. But, that's rare that they would do that over an injury, but that's maybe not the best example. But, let's say something happens in the interim, the school will, ixnay them somehow or the other. But so.
But I mean, they can sign a letter of intent and still transfer, nowadays. So it's like, it doesn't even matter anymore. So
yeah, it's what Julian did. I mean, for the most part, although there was a coaching change.
But yeah, I mean, the freedom of movement is there for everybody.
Tony, when you were running down the running back room, and the absence of most likely Tavien Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, it brought to mind, I just grabbed my Athlons, just curious as to where they placed these two guys on their All-America list. They got Tavien first team, Quinshon second team. So to say the least, the Buckeyes are set up at running back. There's going to be a natural comparison by fans and media of these two. I've seen a lot of Tavien Henderson, of course. I've seen quite a bit of Quinshon Judkins for an Ole Miss player. I'm not watching Ole Miss play every week, but I catch him probably 5 times a year. I just think there's going to be an interesting comparison in determining who's the better back. Not that it matters. If they both do their job, they're both exceptional, and the end goal is to win, but by the people that don't matter, the fans, the media, in comparing, oh, well, he ran for 87 yards against Oregon and he only ran for 59. He must be better. All of that comparisons in front of us.
For sure. And they'll have to tune all of that out, but also drive each other. I think what you'll see is Tavien Henderson will hit some home runs. I know scouts like Judkins better because he doesn't have injuries to this point. He's not dealt with that. And Tavien Henderson every year, say for his first year, he has dealt with injuries. So that is a concern. Judkins, the more consistent guy, more comfortable running between the tackles, but also scouts love Tavien Henderson's ability to take it wide and take it long. And so I think they're going to work out really well together. And I'm interested to see if they actually play at the same time, play in the same backfield together on the same snaps. But I don't think it's possible mathematically for one to be a first-team All-American and another to be a second-team All-American because they won't have the stats for it, and stats are how we all judge everything. So for one of those guys to be a first-team All-American, they're both going to have the attention and the hype. But if one guy has the numbers, that means something happened to the other guy. And so I don't know if Buckeye fans really want to see that. And then, I think another interesting thing to watch is those guys aren't going to be carrying the ball likely in the fourth quarter. And so you're going to be going to your third string running back in the fourth quarter of blowouts. And so who is that? And there's going to be opportunities there. And in the past, you would see the backup get carries in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's why, again, I'll mention Master Teague. I think in 2019, you go look, he was maybe like the number 5 rusher nationally in the second half of football games in the fourth quarter because they just gave him the ball and they ran out the clock. You're not going to put Quinshon Judkins or Tavien Henderson in that situation. You're going to be putting a true freshman in that situation, whether it's James Peoples or Sam Williams-Dixon. I think that's going to be huge for then what happens in 2025. And I'll just also say, I say that Quinshon Judkins is likely off to the NFL, but if you're a second rounder, because first rounders are rare, he could perhaps make more at Ohio State next year than in the NFL with the NIL stuff and the actual NIL stuff, the revenue sharing that is going to go on he's going to have a decision to make about whether to go start your NFL career or perhaps make more money as a college football player, which is a pretty crazy thought. But also, the running backs have to think about their legs. And so getting to the NFL as quickly as possible to get your second contract is also something that is going to weigh heavily on him.
Yeah, you make a really good point. It could be a tough decision for Quinshon Judkins after this season. If he comes back in 2025, he could make comparable money, certainly, potentially. And I don't know, it depends where he would be projected to be drafted. I guess it depends how this season would go. It would be a huge benefit for Ohio State because the roster is going to be pretty well depleted, at least the starting lineup. 15 of the 22 or thereabouts should be headed to the NFL. So, or, we'll be done with their eligibility, or go early to the NFL like some of these guys can. So it's going to be really interesting, I think, to see how they handle the running back position. If there's anybody that can do it, it's Chip Kelly. He will know what to do with two great running backs. Who do you take off the field? Do you take off the third wide receiver who's not that great of a blocker? Do you take off the tight end who potentially would help with the blocking? Does one running back block for the other, on these things? Do you run, reverse handoffs or double reverses or flea flickers or whatever kind of gimmicky type stuff that you might run with, exotic sets like this? I don't know, but it's going to be, again, so much fun to just see what Ryan Day and Chip Kelly have cooked up for people. They're sitting there popping each other, in the meeting room. Oh, this is going to be great. Oh, we're going to get them on this, or whatever. Or I think if we hit that one block, it goes, that type thing. And, if we get this look, it's over. Just think about, what they're sitting there in those meetings contemplating about what opponents are going to give them to work with this year, and knowing that you've got better talent than 10, 11, 12 of the teams you're going to play. So it always helps to have bigger, faster X's and O's, and Ohio State's got that in a lot of instances.
And I'll just mention before we get going, and I will have to jump up here in a few minutes, but Bodpegn Miller just committed to Ohio State, announced it on Twitter. 2025 receiver, 6'4", 190. Really good story in the dispatch from Colin Gay about him today, talking about he's originally from Ethiopia. Family went over there and brought him over when he was 5 or 6 years old, and so has been in Ohio since then. And really good story. I'd recommend go checking that out. But yeah, the latest commitment for the Buckeyes, Bodpegn Miller, a guy who earned an offer 3 days ago and is now committed to Ohio State as a receiver, not as a quarterback or an athlete or whatever. And so there you go.
Awesome.
And you guys had just brought him up from Ontario High School. Very good. Good timing there, Tony. Thanks for jumping on that. All right, folks, appreciate you being here. Again, we could be here next Wednesday. We could be here next Friday. I can just about guarantee 99.9% certain we will be here at some point. So please subscribe and hit that bell for the notifications. In the meantime, it's Bucknuts 247 with Steve, and it is BuckeyeHuddle.com and the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. When does the next one drop, Tony?
Okay. We're going to end up going probably live here in a little bit, but I do have one that'll drop at some point this afternoon. But I don't know if it's going to drop before the one that we're just about to do about Bodpegn Miller here in a few minutes. So there'll be a couple out there today, probably.
Excellent. So join Tony there. See us tonight on the Big Ten Live Show for a big breakdown on USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon, 7 p.m. Eastern tonight. We'll see you all next week.